how people view the world. The right, they see things through a lens of law and order versus chaos. The left sees the world through a lens of victim and oppressor, that if somebody is poor, somebody else had to cause that. It's actually not true. Poverty is the default state of mankind. Everything else is how we have escaped poverty. Libertarians, such as me, view the world through a lens of freedom versus enslavement. And that is like me all over the place. I do view the world that way. And so understanding where people are coming from, it helps to remember these three things. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Gold Silver Show with Mike and Alan. And this is basically sort of part two of the video where Alan presented everything about Javier Milei and Argentina and the big inflation and government redistribution of wealth and so on and so forth. And so I have been desperately wanting to close a window with a whole bunch of open tabs. So you're going to see that a lot of these stories are from like April, May, June, July, because this window, this browser window has been open that long, and I just haven't been able to use these stories, but they're not dated stories. They are still pertinent right now. And the first, I just want to cover a couple real quick here and just read you the headlines. So, Business Insider, people are really annoyed about the price of fast food. McDonald's just admitted it's too expensive and it's driving some customers away. Coca-Cola says fewer people are eating dinner out and that's hurting sales of its drinks. Aw. Got any comments, Alan?
Well, I guess I'm not surprised. These are cheap products that I tend not to buy anyways. So I can't say that I'm upset that their sales are down.
It's probably been 30 years since I've had a Coke. And I don't eat at McDonald's either. So it doesn't really affect me. But moving on, do you remember after the lockdowns, everybody was getting paid to stay home? This is from June of 2024. And I think it is perfect. Now hiring people that show up because I had a horrible, it set my farm back at least a year trying to compete with the government. You just couldn't get anybody to do anything. It was awful. The government ruined the economy. And you can't go back and repair all of that economic damage that was done in 2020, 2021, 2022. And that limits our prosperity infinitely out into the future because, whatever level of prosperity that you're at today is built upon the level of prosperity that you were at yesterday. And by issuing all that currency, paying everybody to stay home, that was the raging inflation that we've experienced over the past 3 years. I love this. This is the Rise and Shine Cafe, and they took the tax line and inserted government extortion. Just a side note. Now, the student loan debate in 2 tweets. So this was back when they were still debating it in June. Kamens makes $90,000 a year and works for Representative Marcy Kaptur, I guess that is. So in here, his student debt has just been canceled. And then another tweet a little later from him, the phone eats first. This looks like an old fashioned. And then you can see there's some fries there. That's the bottom of this appetizer tray. But this one, a seafood tray, and that's a lobster in there. I don't know if you've ever ordered one of these, but this is typically like somewhere between $120 and $300. So he's celebrating the cancellation of that student debt. And the mayor of St. Paul, who makes $170,000 a year, is thanking the government for canceling his student loans. No balance due. And then this meme Nothing like plumbers and electricians paying for the student loans of lawyers. What a great scheme. Now, there is something missing from this meme, and that is the government standing right here, pointing a gun at their heads and extorting taxes out of them to be able, this is just blatant theft. That's what the cancellation of student loans was. Blatant theft by our own government. And so this wealth transfer going to the attorney caused by the government. So they didn't include the government standing in here. And the reason I say pointing a gun at their heads is because if you choose not to pay your taxes because of things like this, they'll hit you with penalties and interest. And if you don't pay all of that, they will put you in jail. If you don't want to go to jail and you barricade yourself in your house with guns, they will come and kill you. So literally, the government does point a gun at our heads and extort taxes out of us to do this wealth transfer to the friends of government. So moving on, now in a reflection of the previous video on Argentina and Javier Milei, here we're taking a look at basically Venezuela. Socialism has always ended in severe poverty and misery. Now, I want to add and death to that, because socialism, it's one idea that has killed more, hundreds of millions of people have died around the world due to Karl Marx's just idiotic idea. Why are young people so fascinated by socialism? And so what you see here is that this data is adjusted for inflations and the difference in cost of living. So that's purchasing power parity. The world, Latin America, and then you've got back to 1945. So this data starts just at the end of World War II, and Argentina becoming the wealthiest country in South America. And then there was the nationalization of the oil companies and a socialistic president. And now they are behind where they were back in 1945. It is just amazing. Venezuela used to be twice as wealthy as Chile. Then Chile followed Milton Friedman's ideas while Venezuela was ruled by socialists. Now Chile is the wealthiest large country in South America, and Venezuela is the poorest. The difference between capitalism and socialism visualized. And so here is Venezuela, and we're talking about 1980 to 2023, and they're stuck exactly back in 1980 with a purchasing power parity adjusted price. They're making $7,900 a year, basically, or maybe this GDP per person. So, and then Chile going from 3.4 to 29.9, 30. Okay, so huge growth. And you can see here the scale. These are all of the red countries are poorer. This one has no data. And then all of the green countries have gotten richer than where Venezuela was. Venezuela was the richest. This was the richest. Everybody else was poorer. Now, Venezuela is the poorest because they didn't go anywhere and everybody else grew. As you unleash capitalism. Any comments?
Yeah, that's remarkable. I mean, so Venezuela is a story of what not to do. And as we saw in part one of this video, Venezuela has the least economically free country on the planet, lower than Zimbabwe and Sudan. So if you're a leader and you're looking for an example to follow, do the opposite of what Venezuela has done, and you should be okay.
During the lockdowns, that period of time, 2020, 2022, I would interview my Uber drivers, basically. Where are you from? What's your story? For quite a period of time, about 50% of the Uber drivers were from Venezuela. They had just come over, in the past year or so on. And I'd say, well, what did you do in Venezuela? I was a successful doctor. I was a successful attorney. And these people scrap their entire life, everything that they've built, to escape to capitalism from socialism, voting with their feet, starting over again as an Uber driver. I was amazed. Venezuela timeline, 1992, became the third richest country in the hemisphere. So after the US and Canada was Venezuela. 1997 became the second largest purchaser of the Ford F-150 pickup truck. 2001 voted for a socialist president, and his platform was income inequality. So now everybody is equally poor in Venezuela. They fixed the income inequality, with the exception of the politicians and the military and the police. They all get to live like kings. 2004, private health care is completely socialized. 2007, all higher education becomes free. 2009, socialists banned private ownership of guns. 2012, Bernie Sanders praises their American dream. 2014, opposition leaders are imprisoned. 2016, food and healthcare shortages have become widespread. 2017, Constitution and elections are suspended. 2019, unarmed citizens massacred by own government. It only took one generation of progressive leadership to plunge this country into civil war. Well, I don't know about civil war, but I do know that these ideas are just flat out dangerous. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that this is a test case in what not to do. So do the complete opposite of this, and people will be free, and they'll be happy, and they'll be healthy. It's like
Right.
capitalism is an unequal share of wealth, but socialism is an equal share of misery. It's like,
Well said.
and you don't want misery. Just get the misery out of
Right,
here. I'd
right.
rather have a little bit of wealth and somebody
Yeah.
else has a lot than for us both to be equally miserable, just looking for any way out. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So I think this is in New York, but July 29th, communism is making a comeback in the United States. It's just unbelievable. Fight the rich and feed the poor. These people have no idea that the rich do feed the poor. Anybody that wants to work, they get a job from either a wealthy business owner, or sometimes not so wealthy, sometimes struggling. The small businesses, most of them struggle, and but they create most of the jobs, or they get it through wealthy people that create the stock market is a way of funding corporations and through a whole lot of small investors, a whole lot of private investors. And then there's rich people that are venture capitalists and so on that create jobs. All of it creates jobs. Nobody, when they talk about fight the rich, these people actually think that Elon Musk has $200-300 billion in his closet. He doesn't have any cash. He's got Tesla stock. Same for Bezos and on and on and on. All of the big business owners that create most of the jobs have investments, and those investments create more jobs. And so these people are flat out dangerous. They are asking for poverty, misery, and death, and they're doing these rallies based around poverty, misery, and death, and they don't even realize what they're talking about. Any comments about that one?
Yeah, a big breakthrough for me was to realize that I, relative to other people, am both a very rich person and a very poor person. And these people here who are advocating for communism, I think their hearts are, I'll say their hearts are in the right place, loosely phrased, but their heads are nowhere to be found. And it's really helpful to do a sort of thought experiment where you say, okay, let's imagine that I, in my current state, I'm rich, right? Maybe I only have $1,000 in the bank, but that you're very, very rich compared to billions of people in the world. And you can say like, okay, since I'm a rich person, what do I do to help the poor? And if you just distributed all your money to everybody in the world, it would hardly make a dent. So you have to find some other way to do it. And you could employ people and so forth. And, if you also put yourself in the shoes of a poor person and say, oh, I'd like to have, millions of dollars and a yacht and a mansion. How would I get there? Well, it's unrealistic to say, I'm just going to steal it from somebody who already has it or expect a government to give it to me. I have to work my way to get there. How do I do it? Well, I find a rich person and I do some work for them, right? I find someone who's working on, who has a vision, who needs workers to help execute on that vision, and I will go get a job and help them contribute on their mission. And so like that's what you do, whether you're a rich person or a poor person. And I would argue that everybody is both. You can sort of think about what does it take to climb the ladder, no matter where you are on the ladder. And it's not stealing and redistributing things. So it's not communism, right? It's employment, right. It's voluntary employment, and basically trying to make the world a better place that way.
Okay, you were saying that they're probably very well-intentioned, these people, and that is true. But Dan Rubach keeps on reminding me that I believe it was Carl Sagan that said, you've got to keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. And now there's something that I read somebody wrote at the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, great website, by the way. And it was that how people view the world. And the right tends to view they see things through a lens of law and order versus chaos. The left sees the world through a lens of victim and oppressor, that if somebody is poor, somebody else had to cause that. It's actually not true. Poverty is the default state of mankind. Everything else is how we have escaped poverty. Libertarians, such as me, and when I read this, I go, wow, this guy's right. View the world through a lens of freedom versus enslavement. And, that is like me all over the place. I do view the world that way. And so understanding where people are coming from, it helps to remember these three things. Law and order versus chaos, victim and oppressor, victim versus oppressor, that there's got to be somebody causing this misfortune that somebody else is experiencing, and then freedom versus enslavement. And I think the best is to try your best to understand the people that you're talking to, and then even communicate this so that they might take a look at the other side. The right trying to understand the left, understanding these lessons, these lenses that they're viewing the world through. So those are my two comments on this, but this is so incredibly dangerous. And we've seen how this can shorten all of our lifespans, make people less happy, less productive, and so on. So moving on, hurricanes, still not as destructive as communism. And this was back in October. Now, there was Hurricane Helene that went through Florida, killing 26, which was more powerful. But then there was Hurricane Milton, I believe it was, that killed 32. So a much more deadly hurricane. And here is Florida still lit up. And here is North Korea. And you can see some lights up here in China, and then South Korea right here. And then there's just like two major cities that have, like most people do not have indoor electricity. They don't have electricity throughout the whole country. This is just poor dirt farmers living back in the 1800s. And they're doing this in the 21st century. Any comments on communism versus capitalism?
I mean, that title really sums it up. Hurricanes are still not as destructive as communism. I mean, this one speaks for itself, I think.
Yep, it does. So this world population living in extreme poverty from 1820. So this is basically it's continued on this way, but this is 200 years of data, and it was back then. It was about 94% living in extreme poverty, and it's fallen to below 10, to 9%. This is capitalism. This was not capitalism. This was like, kingdoms, basically enslavement when you're talking about feudal societies and so on. And so capitalism is responsible for lifting more than 90%, that's about 85% of the world population has been lifted out of poverty by free market capitalism. And I just want to share one thing because, I talk with one of the problems that we have had is socialistic professors that are being paid by the government that are teaching just fallacy economics in colleges. I know only too well how hopeless it seems to convince impassionate supporters of the socialistic idea by logical demonstration that their views are preposterous and absurd. I know too well that they are open to no argument. They are not. They're completely closed to any argument that proves them wrong because they've been through this indoctrination in these colleges with socialistic professors that have spread this disease. But new generations are growing up with clear eyes and open minds. Sorry, Ludwig, it didn't happen. It got worse. And they will weigh and examine, will think and act with forethought. No, it is for them that this book is written. I'm sorry, Ludwig, but they didn't read it. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you, Alan. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.